Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the UC Health Training Center for another episode of Broncos Now. Team reporter and host Sydney Jones here. And coming up on today's episode, the team officially announced Sean Payton as the head coach of your Denver Broncos. We'll talk about the hire and the trade, and NFL Network's Peter Schrager joins the show to give his thoughts on Coach Payton. All that and more coming up. After a ton of speculation surrounding the head coaching search, the Denver Broncos have finalized a deal with the New Orleans Saints that will make Sean Payton their next head coach. The Broncos are sending New Orleans this year's first-round pick and a 2024 second-round pick in exchange for Sean Payton and a Saints 2024 third-rounder. So joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio to talk about the hire and the experience Sean Payton brings to Denver is Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla. Aric, the deal is finally done. What was your initial reaction to when you found out?
Yeah, well, first, no skipping ahead to Peter Schrager. Everyone's got to listen to me first. No, I was excited. I think that this is a big win, a home run type hire for the Broncos. We've heard that over and over from different media members, but I think it's true, and that you have a proven head coach, somebody who has gone out there and won a Super Bowl in his history, has time and time again shown an ability to put together a top 10 offense. And I think there's this sentiment maybe when you think about Sean Payton that, it's Drew Brees that did this with Sean Payton. And that's certainly true. They did a lot together. But I also think you've got to think about what he did, later in Drew Brees' career and without Drew Brees. Mm-hmm. And for him to still find success there is just as impressive to me. And so if you're a Broncos fan and you're trying to figure out how do we get Russell Wilson back to where he was before the 2022 season, there's nobody better to help him get to that point than Sean Payton.
Yeah, why do you think Coach Payton is the right fit here for the Broncos?
Yeah, it's twofold, Sydney. I think one, the Russell Wilson effect. Yeah. You've got to find a way for Russell Wilson to play at a higher level. He admitted that going into the offseason. And he doesn't need to be the top quarterback in the league, but you do need more. And certainly if you're in the types of games that you want to be in the postseason, you need somebody that can take you on a big-time drive and go win the football game. Russell Wilson's shown an ability to do that. Sean Payton's shown an ability to do that. I think Sean Payton can build an offense that highlights Russell Wilson's strengths. I mean, we heard him during the season. He was asked, hey, how would you help Russ get going? And he said, I'd ask for cut-ups of the things that Russ does best, and here's what he does inside the red zone, and here's some of the plays that he executes really well. And then I'd make sure we do those things. And so kind of 1A is let's get Russell Wilson playing at a Russell Wilson level. But I think just for the whole team, Sydney, this team needed an experienced coach, somebody that has done this before, who knows how to transform a culture, who knows how to do everything from setting the schedule to making sure you're ready to go for a road game. I mean, those things I think people maybe tend to overlook a little bit. With an experienced head coach, you get those things. I think you're going to have a coach who comes in here and demands accountability, demands a certain standard from these players. And listen, so the honest truth is that there's a lot of guys on this roster who have just not won a lot of football games. And so to have somebody come in that has won a lot of football games and knows how to get a team to that point. He took the Saints from 3-13 to 10-6 in his first season. He's done this sort of transformation before. That's wildly important. And I think that's just as much as the Russell Wilson impact, the ability to help the entire team is a big reason why Sean Payton's in Denver.
For sure. We heard reports come out saying that Russell Wilson reached out to Sean Payton during the interview process. And, he talked at the end of the season just about how highly he thinks of Sean Payton and, how great of a coach he thinks he is. So you mentioned the relationship between him and Sean Payton. How do you think maybe they'll work together, and what do you expect from Russ this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think a little early in terms of expectations for Russ, just from like a touchdown to interception ratio or yards or all those sort of things. But what I would say is that I expect an offense that better highlights Russell Wilson's skill set. Yeah. And so then I would expect more success from Russell Wilson. I don't know if that means he's going to be a Pro Bowler again in 2023. I don't know if that means he's going to be NFL Comeback Player of the Year. But I would expect him to play at a higher level, in part just because I think another year here in Denver, being used to this environment, being comfortable helps. But I do think, you've heard a lot of different people say it, that if anyone can design an offense for Russell Wilson to thrive in, it's going to be Sean Payton. Obviously, they do have that connection from spending time together at various Pro Bowls. We know how much Russell Wilson admires Drew Brees. I don't know that it's going to look exactly like it did in New Orleans with Drew Brees, throwing more passes than anybody in the league, but I do think there are elements of that will work, and I think you're going to see a Russell Wilson that's much closer to what the Broncos expected when they traded for him last year.
Yeah. Well, Aric, there was a ton of speculation and, just a lot of unknowns throughout this head coaching search. But, ownership did exactly what they set out to do. Yeah,
you're right. And it's interesting because when this process started, Greg Penner, owner and CEO, said, hey, we're going to go through this whole process. We're going to be very thorough. We've got to get this right. The Broncos then interviewed 8 candidates. Mm-hmm. They took their time through that process. Obviously, a lot of different reports out there about who's a favorite and who's not a favorite. And they're interviewing new candidates and a lot of stuff out there that was just kind of nonsense. But if you kind of push all that away and just get to the truth of the matter, it's that the ownership group took their time. They found a candidate they liked. Yes, there was a level of compensation involved that maybe made the deal a little trickier to get done. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you're essentially trading Bradley Chubb for Sean Payton with a pick swap there between the second and third round. So that seems very palatable to me, at least. But what they did was they said they were going to prioritize experience. They did that. They said they were going to find a strong leader who was going to find people accountable, keep people and hold them accountable. Yeah. They did that. They said they were going to find someone who could help this team on the offensive side of the ball and have an offensive identity. They did that. And so, listen, when you fire a coach toward the end of the season, and there's a lot of time that passes between when that happens and the hire is made, I think it's natural that people get antsy and they start wondering what's happening. But at the end of the day, I think it's clear Sean Payton was always near the very top of the Broncos board, if not the very top. For sure. And they hired him, and that's what they said they were going to do all along. So kudos to ownership for going out and taking a big swing. You're willing to give up draft picks. I think a head coach like Sean Payton, probably a future Hall of Famer, is worth more than a late first round pick. Yeah. You're bringing someone in who can transform the culture. One of his former quarterbacks said, hey, he's worth at least 4 or 5 wins a year. Mm-hmm. When you talk about that sort of impact, you talk about a guy that the Broncos knew they had to go get, and they made it happen. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, there's so much to look forward to in the next coming weeks here, Aric. Appreciate you taking the time to join me today. Yeah, of course. You got it, Sid. Plus, I had the opportunity to catch up with NFL Network's Peter Schrager to get his thoughts on Sean Payton and what he'll bring to Denver. Take a listen. Peter, just to start, what excites you about this hire for the team?
Well, I got to know Sean Payton, the man, this year. I work on Fox NFL Kickoff with him, and I had never had a relationship with him when he was with the Saints. And as a reporter, when you say relationship, did I cover his games? Yes, but it never extended beyond that. He had his guys in the media. He had his gals in the media that he dealt with, and I just never was one of them. So when he got hired for Fox, I was like, all right, I'll see how this goes. And in comes this warm embrace, stories, and then the smarts. Like, this guy's got a different mind. And I talked to all the coaches. I talked to the offensive wizard. Like, we watch football together on Sundays, and he sees it differently. And he believes you can give him a roster and he will get the very most out of every single player on that roster. And they'll come away as a team that not only celebrates wins, but they'll enjoy celebrating the wins, as in, like, we're going to enjoy this thing too. And then on Monday, you're going to burn the tape and you're going to start anew, but take a moment to enjoy the wins. I think there's gonna be a lot of joy, a lot of competitiveness, and he is no nonsense when it comes to practice and diligence and what it takes. But let's just say that Broncos fans, your owners are likely paying a pretty penny to bring in Sean Payton. I think he's worth every single one of them. I know Broncos country is excited. Peter, we know he had a ton of interest from a lot of teams that had head coach openings this year. So why do you think maybe Denver was the perfect fit for him? He was blown away by the meeting. So I know they met in Los Angeles about 10 days ago in Orange County. And he came away and he was like, this Penner, I spoke to him. This Penner is smart. Like, he is whip smart. Condoleezza Rice is incredible. He's like, I don't know that George Payton that well. I really liked him. And there was a small group that he met with. And he said they met for a long time. They talked philosophy. They talked culture. And I think you think about the quarterback and you think about, okay, well, they've got these young players on defense. That stuff wasn't as much of a priority as the ownership group and how he loved their enthusiasm to dive in and make their first hire be a hire that can set the tone for the future of this Broncos franchise. I'll tell you one thing about Sean Payton. He took that city of New Orleans and he dove right in. He lived there in New Orleans for 16 years. He bled with those people, and he is an icon in that city. When you look at Denver and you look at what football means to Denver, and whether it's steakhouses named after John Elway or steakhouses named after Mike Shanahan, or whether it's just all of the history with Mile High, I think Sean Payton is an incredible fit because he knows the history of the game and he knows just how great that fan base is.
Yeah. Well, Peter, as you know, the Broncos are sending New Orleans this year's first round pick and a 2024 second round pick in exchange for Sean Payton and a Saints 2024 third rounder. Overall, what'd you just think about the trade?
Yeah, I think it was a good job by Mickey Loomis and the Saints to get that much from Sean Payton, because if you don't pull the trade off this year, you might not get the same compensation next year when you're talking about a guy who's now just 1 year left on his contract. I think first round pick is what I heard all along. And this is a good deal for the Saints, but it's also a good deal for the Broncos. This is an end of the first round pick. It's not a top 10 pick. And I honestly believe that if the Saints were negotiating with a team in the NFC, it's particularly the Panthers in the NFC South, they would have been demanding a lot more. So I think the Broncos fans, you might be kicking yourself a little bit saying, first and second round pick, those are really good players. But you go through the history. I don't think the Patriots ever lost sleep about trading for Bill Belichick. I don't think the Jets ever lost sleep for trading for Bill Parcells. You talk about Bruce Arians and the Cardinals, and then the Buccaneers go on to win. It's like these trades for the coaches, they usually work out pretty well.
Well, we all saw how revolutionary, Sean Payton's offense was with the Saints. You mentioned how he was able just to get in there and turn things around. So how do you think he'll come in here and, help the Broncos get out of this playoff drought that they've been in?
Yeah, I don't know X's and O's to the point that maybe the ex-players or the analysts or the people who cover the team locally would. I couldn't tell you the first thing right now about what the Broncos offense did right or did wrong. It was an abomination from afar. Like, I just watched it and was like, it didn't work. And I think Hackett's actually a really smart offensive mind. Your fans right now who are watching this video might say, isn't this the stupid guy who picked Hackett to win Coach of the Year and didn't make it through the season? I was, because I knew what Rodgers thought of Hackett. And I thought he and Russ were going to have the same kind of connection that maybe McVay and Stafford had the year before. It didn't work. I do think Sean Payton comes in here, and I do think that you get a culture and you get an offense that is going to be humming with creativity. I don't know if it works with Russell Wilson. I honestly don't. I'm a fan of Russ, going back all the way to his Seattle days. But I will say this. Sean Payton showed up to New Orleans. That franchise hadn't won anything in their history, relatively speaking, nothing in the postseason. Yeah. And Drew Brees was a guy who people had written off because of a shoulder injury, and they went on to have an amazing, amazing run together. I wouldn't rule out Sean Payton and Russell Wilson having some success too. Here's one point that I do have that I don't think anyone else talks about. He coached him in the Pro Bowl a few years ago, so they do have a relationship in some way. And Drew Brees lives in San Diego, as does Russell Wilson, and those guys are friendly. And if you put the connection together, I don't think Sean Payton runs to this job if Brees doesn't put a good word in for Russell Wilson and at least says, hey, this is a good dude you could work with.
For sure. That's a great point. And I know we all heard Russell Wilson just say how much praise he had for, Sean Payton, and thinks the world of him. So it'll be exciting to see how they work together.
Do we have a press conference yet? When is that? I want to watch that.
Yeah.
Do we have it
not sure. Might be in a couple days.
Okay. All right. I'll be watching you on that one.
Yeah. Well, Peter, what do you think maybe is at the top of Sean Payton's to-do list, once he gets in here?
Figure out what's up with Russ. Last year was not the Russell Wilson that the Broncos traded for or paid that salary to. So it's going to be a reconstruction project or just, hey, let me look at this guy. Oh, he's okay. We just have to build something around him. But Russell Wilson and him and the relationship's going to be important. Yeah. I don't know many people who have an ability to connect with people of all different types of backgrounds and upbringings and experiences like Sean does. I mean, those players who played from New Orleans swear by him, but also the people he's touched over the course of his career with Dallas and with New York and with Philadelphia. He's a special connector of people and a special type of guy when it comes to juice. And if Russell Wilson sort of was a bit off this past year as far as statistics and maybe what version of Russ we got, I would like to think he's going to have to connect with Payton for them to get that on track. And that will be Sean's first job in Denver.
Definitely. Well, last one here for you. Once he starts to build his staff here, is there anyone that Broncos country should keep their eye out for?
Ooh. Yeah, he's definitely not coming in here just, hey, it's me and Sean Payton. I'm going to start dialing up guys, cold calling them. I'd be interested about the defensive coordinator job. Right now, it looks like there was a report that Vic Fangio was going to Miami. And then it was like, no, he might be going to San Francisco. And then everyone's like, well, he would never go back to Denver. He was the head coach there. Right. But Sean and Vic are very close. So I'd like to see and follow that one. I think Evero did a fantastic job last year. And I don't think Sean's opposed to saying, wait, if he's willing to come back as a defensive coordinator, I mean, gosh, that was a tremendous defense and he's a young talent. Would love to have him, but they don't have much of a relationship or a history. Dennis Allen's back in New Orleans as defensive coordinator. So he's a head coach. So he's not coming as the DC. Be curious the staff Sean builds. Really bright guy with a lot of people in his Rolodex that he's worked with. And I don't think he's going to be poaching from the New Orleans staff as much as looking for guys who he either hasn't met before, who have had success, or also guys that he's worked with and has loved in the past who might not be under contract with the Saints.
Right. Well, lots to look forward to in the next couple of days. Peter, appreciate you joining the show and appreciate your insight always.
Can I just tell you, he wore an orange tie on Fox NFL Kickoff. I mean, like, did anyone locally connect the dots? He was trying to scream from the mountaintops, guys.
Mike Kliss actually, he tweeted it.
In real time? I hope in real time, not after the fact, because I'll tell you what, that was a big sign.
It was telling for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Peter, appreciate it. Well, that'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to follow the Broncos Podcast Network on Twitter and the Denver Broncos YouTube page to stay up to date on all the latest episodes. I will see you all next time.